What's up, everyone? It's your girl Rossie, and I'm back with another amazing interview. Guys, I got Nick Anderson, director, screenwriter, actor. He is here tonight, and we're going to discuss a film that he's doing. It's a feature-length film, it's a documentary, and we're going to talk about it because it's going through some name changes. So I'm going to let Nick introduce himself and introduce the documentary. Nick, say hi to the folks.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick Anderson, director of the previously called A Call for Home, which we're looking at a recent name change to The Right to Exist, a documentary about the housing and homelessness crisis in Sacramento.
Great. So Nick, first of all, how did you get into, were you acting first? Were you directing? How did you get into just the entertainment industry, period?
So I was, a bit of a theater kid, really from the early grades all the way up. So I think my first, writing credit to a degree, if anyone actually gave me credit, was in third grade. And so I wrote and, put on a little play for my grade school friends at the time and kind of caught the bug ever since and was more or less in a play year by year all the way through high school, doing musicals and stuff like that, and really got interested in how stories were told. And I remember my senior year of high school working on a graphic novel as my senior project with another friend, and we read Story by Robert McKee, which is kind of one of those big books on screenwriting, and ended up a screenwriting major down at Chapman University in LA. So
nice. So screenwriting and storytelling, what did you like so much about storytelling, screenwriting? I guess are they the same basically?
I mean, a little bit. A screenplay
Okay.
specifically is a blueprint for how to make a movie. So I always think it is a blueprint and it's a sales document. So those two things it's got to do. It's got to sell the idea of what the film could be. Everyone has to be able to see the potential in there.
Okay.
And it's also a blueprint for how you create this film. And so I think a screenplay has more than one purpose that has to do. It can't just be storytelling. But I think that it is, the most important thing is telling a story, and the idea of the words you choose to create that image, to create that impression was something I was always connected with. Both my parents are English PhDs, and kind of, I'm not, instilled in me that love of language and love of reading and how you use words to create imagery and tell story.
Okay. What was your first like professional project that you did that gave to us basically?
Well, so initially I wasn't I got a internship right off the bat out of college at Warner Brothers,
Okay.
and then worked in story development there for 2 or 3 years. And so I was very lucky to become a coverage writer, a script
Okay.
coverage, which refers to reading a screenplay, then writing a summary of that script, and then a recommendation for the studio to either take on the project or not. And that meant that I probably over 3 years read like 300 or 400 scripts. And so that really
Wow.
gave me an idea for what works, what doesn't work, where's the potential of a project that maybe you need some development, need some work on it before it's there, but has all the seeds of what could be a great film.
Right, right. And documentary, the new documentary that you have out, the new name that you're working with, a call for home, is now going to be
The Right to Exist.
The Right to Exist. I just want to read a little bit about what this is about. You guys, we're in Sacramento, so A Right to Exist will explore the rapidly expanding homelessness crisis in Sacramento, California, through a combination of storytelling and analysis. The film will follow individuals experiencing homelessness over the course of a year. You did this for a year. With homelessness in California, guys, just to let you know, and it's not just California, this is happening all across the United States. Here in California, in Sacramento, it just happened to just like it grew faster than it grew really fast. I mean, we're hitting numbers that are more than San Francisco, which is very unusual for us here. Did you have any preconceived ideas about homeless people and what you thought of them, or because some people think, I know I did, well, I went through that, but you still think, what's wrong? Why can't you work? All this. Did you have any of that?
I did. I had a lot of both preconceived notions and also, fears about doing the documentary. And so, 2 years before we took on the feature film, I did a short film. And so most of my ignorance came from back then. and trying to do about a 20-minute short film on the subject. And so, initially I had heard people say, hey, you shouldn't go out with expensive cameras. You should, be careful who you talk to. A lot of them are drug addicts, a lot of mental illness, and stuff like that. And there's a lot of stigmas out there. Of course, there is the subset of the population that those apply to, but more often than not, I found that the stigmas and the stereotypes that I had been led to believe were not true and were not correct. And so I had a lot of eye-opening experiences and was shocked at how welcoming the community was to a filmmaker and a storyteller, and really felt like a lot of people felt like their voice was being honored by having, I was nervous about putting the camera on someone, making them maybe feel victimized or like in any
Right.
way that I was, using their story for my own gain. And so I wanted to make sure I
Right.
was honoring the voices and the people I was speaking with.
Right. I was looking at one of them's, it's on his YouTube channel, guys. Everything will be in the link of the video. It was called the Invisible Homeless. That's another one that you did. Was that in connected with this film, or was that just the one that you're talking about? Was just the first one that you did?
It was the first one that I did, but it was very
Okay.
much the reason I made the feature film. I
Okay.
was feeling like, oh,
Okay.
there's no way in 20 minutes I can say half the things I want to say. And also, I was kind of ignorant at the time. And so I was getting an education of, who the players are in the area, of who to speak with, who are the experts, what are the topics that are not being discussed about
Right.
homelessness in Sacramento. And over that time, I also watched a lot of films that were out there about homelessness and the housing crisis. And I felt like, oh, there's a gap of things that are not being said, of things that are analysis and data we know about that is not being put at the forefront to the population, and are not easy to consume. And so I felt like, oh, someone has to wrap this in a 90-minute container that at least can be a conversation prompt or a conversation starter. And so I think, at least for documentaries, often my role as a director is kind of an audience surrogate, where I'm trying to put myself in the audience shoes and find out, how do you introduce this topic? How do you begin the conversation? I think, like you said, when you go downtown in Sacramento right now, this is a conversation that's absolutely necessary. It
Yes.
couldn't be more important right now.
Absolutely. I got some numbers from the film, and unsheltered count increase in 2022 was 6,664 people. In 2019, it was 3,900 people. It's definitely shot up. Also, a point in count again. This is San Francisco had 7,704 as of 2022, and Sacramento had 9,278. When you talk to, I know you talk to, it could be single women or just different women, people that have been homeless for a long time. What did, like, for the single women, the families, what did they tell you? What happened?
I mean, so that's one of the things I'm trying to get across in the feature film. That was in the short film, we addressed specific situations
Okay.
for different women, and that was the Invisible Homeless specifically focused on women and children.
Right.
Hence the name was kind of, there's certain people you think of as the guy talking to himself on the corner of the street, but
Right.
there's a lot of
Right.
people you don't see, who maybe don't want to put their face out there, or
Right.
feel ashamed of what they're going through. And so we wanted to bring attention to those stories and find people who are brave enough to kind of speak out and tell their story. And so I
Right.
tried to kind of honor those. And so I felt like, in hearing from them, there was a lot more I wanted to say in the feature film, to dig deeper and kind of get those voices and stories out there.
Right. Right. I was telling Nick backstage that, when I was a teenager, we were homeless. I mean, my mom was single. She had two of us girls, and it was really hard. And for us, we had a transitional living, but it's really hard. I don't think people think about kids that are with their parents and dealing with homelessness. We had transitional housing, and at the time, it was the end of the school year. Everyone's signing their yearbooks. And so, when you sign people's yearbooks, they say things and they want to know, where do you live? Where can we come visit you for the summertime? And as a child back then, it was really embarrassing because we didn't have a home. It was like on highway, whatever it was, in Kent, Washington, and getting questions. And that's another thing. People are so curious about what happened, what went wrong. It was just, we were just displaced. We were stayed and we were displaced. But I do know, or do you find that for women and children, obviously they're going to get that help. But I think there's a lot of young men. There are men out there, single men that also have kids. There are people out there sick. I remember with the tiny homes and all that and legal areas. What did you find out? Because I remember you mentioning something about there was a legal camp area in Sacramento. Use it anymore. What's that about?
So one of the stories we just, stumbled into was this camp called Camp Resolution, and we're still following their story to this day. But part of our name change was this fact that when I first came across the camp, they were a camp that had successfully leased a plot of land through a nonprofit group from the city, and were self-governing site. And so that meant that they had porta potties and solar panels and trash pickup. And really, when you went there, they were holding open mic nights and barbecues, and was just this real sense of community and
Wow.
protection. And you just completely, I brought some of my crew out there to see this and film there, and people were just kind of had their minds blown by kind of what this could be, as far as a successful camp that's self-governed by the people who are experiencing homelessness. And so part of our name change is because middle of last year they got an eviction notice saying they were going to close down the camp due to certain needs. And so suddenly this story about, oh, look at this example of a successful camp that's self-governing, that the city of Oakland was looking at, that the city of San Jose had come up to check out, that the city of San Diego had come to look at as a potential model for what they could do in their own cities, was suddenly being threatened to close, and they had an eviction notice. And so since then, they've gotten their lease renewed through the fight. But I felt that was kind of important to change our name and be like, oh, we've got a little more drama than I actually planned on in the film.
Okay.
And that just came through the nature of, again, we were just trying to look at this as a great example to share, and it ended up being, oh, there's now a fight interwoven in the middle of our documentary. And so and I think a big part of that was trying to show in this camp the broad spectrum of different experiences and different people and individuals who are experiencing homelessness, and that you can't just point to one thing as the cause. I think a lot of people want to say it's a methamphetamine crisis, it's a mental illness crisis. And like I said, it's not that those aren't true in some regard, but the vast majority of it is a family crisis, or a financial crisis, or a health crisis. And what happens is there's this bottom floor that we as society, if you fall through that from an income level, the only thing to catch you is homelessness. That's what we have as the bottom, the bottom rung there.
Right. And as far as shelters, I know that dealing with shelters and understanding shelters, watching the news and they're doing interviews, telling them, you can go to shelter and whatnot. And you hear some people that are homeless saying, I don't want to go to shelters because I don't want to be, have to be in at a certain time. But others make a valid point about shelters can be dangerous. It can be dangerous for some women. It can be dangerous for some men. Did they mention that about shelters, or why they don't go to shelters? Did that come up? Because we do have shelters out there. There are shelters for people to go to. And I know a lot of shelters are full, but I also know that for some it's dangerous. It's scary.
Yeah, a lot of shelters are full, which is part of the issue. I don't believe there's enough. I think we have something like 3,000 to 4,000 shelter beds in Sacramento, and around 10 to 13,000 individuals experiencing homelessness. So there's a pretty large gap in the available housing or available shelter space for those individuals. But on top of that, there are all the rules that come with it, which could be that you have a dog that makes you feel safe during the day, or as a emotional support animal, and often animals are not let in. And I know that's kind of a stigma, but you might also have maybe you have an 18-year-old son, and if it's a women's shelter, you can't bring a male over 18 in there, or if it's not a women's children's center, you can't bring them in there. Or you have more belongings than the shelter is willing to let you bring in. So I think there's a rule about like 1 or 2 totes as far as what you can bring into a shelter and keep with you. And maybe it's, oh, if I leave my belongings for a half a day, it will all be taken and stolen. And so I can't go into a shelter, because if I go there for resources, no one's watching my stuff. And so there's a lot of different reasons people don't go in, but it could be your belongings, could be your family, could be your dog, or it could be a past experience you had in a shelter that was negative, and now you have a stigma around it.
Right. Do they ever talk about the fact that the state of California and building houses or homes, or the affordable housing? I know that we see that a lot on the news. The money is going to affordable housing. Why are we having people still living on the streets, living in camps, when there's so many affordable housing? And some of the affordable housing, I don't know if you know, are kind of expensive. It's kind of, like I've been there and done that in affordable housing, and the rent is crazy. So how do they expect for someone to afford that when they don't have anything? Can you speak on that? That boggles my mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, and I'm pretty good with the numbers. I put them,
Right,
in the film
right,
animated for that reason, so I don't know all from the top of my head. But there is, I believe when they talk about being rent burdened, that is when you spend more than 30% of your income on your rent, and that is, something like 50,000 homes in Sacramento. So it's a
right,
massive shortage of what we have versus, affordable housing and people
right,
who are actually rent burdened. And then you have, the kind of a critical one where I think it's where it's, 45% or higher of your rent is spent, or 45% or more of your income is spent on rent, in which case you're considered like extremely or critically rent burdened. And that's, another, 10 to 20,000 homes. And so the shortage there of affordable housing, even though there is some affordable housing out there, is pretty
right.
large. And there's also an issue with, it used to be called Section 8. There's another name for it now, but the voucher program as well, which
Oh
is
yeah,
a
okay.
good idea for a program. And I think is effective when it works, but the amount of vouchers that actually are accepted versus the amount that are out there, I had so many people say, "Oh, I got this golden ticket, I got my voucher,
Right, yeah,
now I can get into a house." And then you
right.
go and try to find when you find out, oh, the people accepting vouchers are few and far between, and
Yes,
yeah, and there's a huge wait list. I think somewhere between 12 to 18 months on average once you get a voucher. So you can
yes,
imagine if you've been homeless for a period of time and you get your voucher and you're like, now my problem's solved, and you find out,
absolutely.
well, I got to wait a year and a half. Hopefully your crisis isn't going to last that long.
Right. Yeah. As far as the vouchers, guys, so we had to get on vouchers because the process is that if you're homeless, and normally for women with children, that's what I'm talking about. You get pushed to the head of the list, but in the meantime, you're at a shelter because you have to go through a I can't think of the word, but anyways, you have to go by the book. Everything's by the book. So first of all, you have to go to your local, DHSH, whatever office, and you sign up and you let them know that you're homeless. Then you get put into a shelter. A shelter can be a motel room because for us, it was like a Motel 6, and they pay for that. And then once you're there for a certain amount of time, then they move you to the shelter house. And usually, if it's a woman with kids, it's like a transitional living. And it's a bunch of women with their kids, and we all live in that house. But there's a lot of rules, and you have to be in by a certain time. You have to be up by a certain time. You have to be actively looking for work. That's what happened in our house. But also, while you're in that transitional house, you're on a list to get that voucher that Nick is talking about. That voucher, there's people that's been on that list for a year, 2 years on that list. Sometimes you're still staying in that house, but once that ticket comes up, you don't necessarily get the place right away because then you have to make sure that place accepts that voucher. And if they do, then the government comes in and they have to go and inspect the homes, make sure everything works in the home. If it's something really small that does not work, the faucet may not turn on all the way or the water doesn't come out right. You then have to go and wait for that to get done. So it is a long process. Been through it, had family members go through it, and it's really, really stressful. So you can imagine that the families that you see that are living on the streets, like Nick said, they're waiting for that golden voucher, for the Section 8 or the voucher program that he's talking about. With your crew, because I know it was a few of you guys. I know you had a producer, obviously, cameraman. How did it affect you guys hearing those stories from people? I know that your instinct is, I want to help. I want to give them something like the person you're talking to right now. How did you all deal with that?
I mean, I think it's pretty hard, if I was totally honest. I have a love of narrative filmmaking, and I think, it's very important to make documentaries, and I like making documentaries, but it is not a light burden to just sit there and hear these stories over and over again and feel like, why can't I? I'm a director. I want to go in and control the situation
Right,
and
right,
make change and impact the situation. And so it's
right,
very difficult when you have to go, oh, this is much larger. I can at best like be a conversation starter on this, and that's kind of the mentality you have to take.
right.
Because I'm sitting there and I'm sometimes helping. I do audio, and sometimes we're recording the audio as
Okay.
well, and I'm sitting there with the headphones on and also conducting the interview. And I've got two young kids, and sometimes I'm
Mm.
like, oh, I don't want to hear myself cry on camera because that's not great. And so it's like,
Right, right,
you're like getting there like
right,
a little dusty in the room and trying to keep a
right.
straight face. But yeah, it's not easy. And so I think part of my reason for doing this was having two young kids and wanting to make sure that if I saw an issue in the world, if they saw me seeing injustice in the world, that I was doing something about it. And, you know, for me, that's making films. But I think, you know, that's part of it. And so hearing these stories, I think if anything, it makes you realize how human so many of the individuals out there who are experiencing homelessness are. I mean, they all are, of course,
Absolutely.
but just how human the stories all are and how relatable they are and how it could just be your uncle or your cousin or your sister or your
Right.
brother or your child, you know, and
Right.
how rough it is out there.
And also, you know, living in the state of California, you know, I mean, our taxes are damn near the highest taxes in the nation. I know being a renter, 1 year as a homeowner, which was a struggle, which was an absolute struggle. And thank goodness they have programs for people like my husband and I that really couldn't afford a home, that we can get into a home. But I have to say, a lot of us are this close to being right out there. That's
Yeah.
how hard it is in California. So when you think of, you know, well, after this interview and after seeing that documentary, I'm sure that it's going to open all of our eyes. Being in that and knowing that, you know, I've met other homeless people because we were in that situation, it will change your idea of what that is, you know, because they don't show you a lot of the families on TV. There are absolutely full families, guys, that are living on the street. Regular everyday people, they get dressed in their car, they go to work, they have to get the kids to school. It's like a normal everyday. They just go home to a camp or a bus or whatever it is. Your documentary, when can we see that? When will it come out?
So we're doing an edit. We have a grant that prompted
Okay.
the beginning of the production, and so that we're doing a screenings in September this year when the grant is ending to get feedback from the community. And so we're actually going to do a couple screenings at homeless camps, and we're going to do some screenings as well. Hopefully, we haven't booked it yet, but at the Guild Theater in Oak
Awesome.
Park, which is kind of Wellspring Women's Center, has been kind of our sponsor and our guide, and really helping us with all the production stuff as well. And so we're hoping to, you know, do screenings in the community. The Invisible Homeless as well, our short film, we took on tour to probably 20 or 30 different locations from churches to community centers. And so, you know, people reach out to me as well. I'd love to screen it for them. In a perfect world, this will be a full-length film, and we would like to seek distribution for it. So we probably won't do a whole bunch of public screenings,
Okay.
but our private screenings will be available to the public. Like, you
Okay.
know, we will not be charging to get into them. We will just be trying to, you know, get feedback as we screen the film. And then we're hoping to wrap, you know, the edit by early next year with a full original score, and, you know, really present the film both to festivals and potentially distributors by early next year.
Right. I see this film doing great. I love documentaries and I love a good documentary. And I can't wait to see this because I want to hear from the people that I see every day. I want to know what they think about what's going on, what they want for the future, and the future of California. I also, though, want to really take a quick moment to talk about some of your other films that you've done. We have a film called The Bust. You guys, I saw the trailer today, and I'm sitting there watching it, and you have these undercover guys, agents going undercover. Really funny in the trailer because we find out that we all have badges. They all have badges. I love that concept. Really good film. Where did that come from? Can you talk about The Bust really quick?
Yeah, that came out of there's the road reel competition, which is like a short film
Okay.
competition. I think they do 3 minute and under films. So we tried to figure out, oh, okay, that's kind of a sketch size. How do we do something like that? And so my friend and I had written up a script with basically this concept before, where it had, you know, a bunch of guys coming together to a drug bust, and they're all pretending to be different intimidating figures from different walks of life. It also gave us like a really diverse and interesting cast. So we went with all kind of different
Absolutely.
stereotypes. And so, you know, then they arrive there, and then they all pull out different badges. So you have ATF and sheriff and cop and FBI and just kind of all these different guys who are there for different reasons. And, you know, and then they all reflect on the fact that they're, you know, undercover and are like, oh, I'm taking, you know, classes on acting to try to be a better undercover agent. And they're all kind of, you know, laughing. I'm kind of spoiling the whole sketch at this point, but yeah, so that was the prompt for that one. And then we ended up seeing it. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there's a Tom Cruise film that ended up doing that exact thing as kind of a real life story. And we were like, oh, there it is. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Also, there's another one I saw today, and I was telling Nick, this one, like, all I needed was some popcorn. I turn it on because what you guys can do if you hit the links, it'll take you to his YouTube channel. You'll be able to check out everything that he's doing. There is a film I want you guys to also check out while you're there. It's called The Change, and I want to read about it. So The Change is a short film set in a post-apocalyptic world following the lives of 5 kids trying to survive a terrifying situation. The film features an all-kids cast, liked by Jess, a young girl trying to teach the others to keep things together while their world falls apart. The film was shot all on location in the mountains of Northern California, beautiful, by a small and passionate crew, Nick and his crew. Guys, this movie was so good. The actors were great. And I really want to shout out the actors, okay? So we have Molly Mykina Wallen, Caleb Roberts, Nathan Rude, Elliot Lichter, Ellie Hawkerson Brunn, and Coda Baker. You kids did a great job. That concept, you were telling me about it. Can you tell them about the concept and what it was supposed to be, or what it may be?
Yeah, the very basic premise of the film is what if it's a world where all the adults have become monsters? And so, it was kind of a bit of a joke. I'd recently become a parent. It was like, well, what if you're born into this world and everything's just on fire? Because I think at the time we were like trapped indoors due to COVID, and there were wildfires outside, so I couldn't go outside. So I was like, okay, the kids are born and everything is just exploding. And so what if we take that to the next degree and we make a post-apocalyptic world where only kids can survive? And so I won't give away kind of there's a little bit of a twist ending, but I also created it as both kind of almost a first chapter of what could become a series, or a potential, kind of pitch for a feature film. And so there's a bit of, these kids up against this world. Some of the older ones have a little bit of experience on how to survive and know certain tricks. And some of them are new to it and have to be taught. And so, it's only a 15-minute short film. But I think we did a pretty good job of building up this world. And I had a lot of inspiration from, kind of Vince Gilligan and Breaking Bad and stuff like that. Yep. So I tried to think of unique ways that you hadn't seen before to deal with monsters and stuff like that.
I absolutely loved it. I love what ends up happening. But the monsters that you guys did, the aesthetics were really, really good. How long who came up with the idea of making a prosthetics like that? And how long did it take to make up each character?
I believe they're based in Vegas now, but at the time it was the Sac Film Armory was the team that came in and took over the effects, and they did a great job. They did molds for all the actors, had them come over, did casts and stuff like that. And so that way we could do relatively quick makeup the day of. So all of the stuff was kind of like silicone plates and stuff like that they could put on. They had to mask the edges and stuff like that. I mean, and of course it's extremely hard work. I can't do anything as far as makeup and effects go. So, hats off to them, but they did a really great job of setting themselves up so we could move fairly quickly on set, because with the kids, we had limited hours. And so because all the monsters were adults, we had them come in ahead of time and kind of, have a little more time to get set up, get through makeup. And then we had, short hours with the kids. We tried to follow the rules. We had a studio teacher on set to maintain safety and all the precautions you have to do, all the hoops you got to jump through if you're using minors. And then, but just had this amazing effects team come in and create these monsters that probably was 2 to 3 hours in makeup to get the whole team set up.
It was great. The opening scene, that's what I think what got me, is seeing Jess walk up and get rid of one of the monsters. And what the hell is this? What is this? So I kicked back on my couch, laying there watching it, and just check out that film. You guys will love it. 15-minute short film. I also want to mention, you won a lot of awards for, it was in a lot of festivals. I mean, it was a Daily Show pick, first-time filmmaker sessions, Bash, Bay Area Short Film Festival. I mean, this film did great.
Yeah, we did really fantastic. I basically, hats off to the kids, the cinematography team. I'll take very little credit aside from kind of the writing and guiding this thing to its success. And then, my most recent short film, The Merger, which is about to become public. I feel bad for not making it public ahead of time. Just finished its festival run, and that one did about 30 festivals and won 8 or 9 awards as well. So, feeling very passionate about the short film market and very excited to do more. So.
I watched that trailer today. So The Merger, guys, let me tell you a little bit about this. The Merger is a dark comedy featuring 2 wealthy and competitive corporate CEOs who meet to discuss a merger between their companies. What starts out as a simple disagreement about branding becomes something more sinister. Friendly barbs turn into cutting jabs, and sportsmen-like sparring develop into a shockingly display of savagery. The trailer to that, really funny. The two guys in office creepily laughing at each other. One gets hired, one. So I can't wait to see that. What else can we expect from you? Do you have anything else that you're working on? Documentaries, please.
Yeah, so I was very lucky. I didn't just get the grant for doing the homeless documentary. I also got one to do a series on climate change and farming practices. This is just kind of a pitch. I've done work more for my commercial side of my production company with a lot of farms in the area. It's Sacramento and Yolo County, and there's a lot of like farm land around here.
Right.
And so kind of fell into that. And then so this series we're doing is 12 short videos really about like cutting edge farming practices and their next steps. And then I have two feature scripts I'm working on right now. One which is with a contract involved that I can't speak about, and which I'm attached to direct. And so in a perfect world, that'll be happening within the next year, and that's Sacramento based, and a true story based off a local resident. And then the other one is a much more ambitious script, kind of based on the merger, which if you see it is kind of a surreal world where capitalism is turned up to 11.
Really? Okay. I can't wait to see what else you have coming. I'm looking forward to seeing the films. What advice would you give to a young person coming up and wants to walk in Nick Anderson's shoes? Wants to be who you are?
Well, I would say just jump in. I mean, one thing I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I think honestly that's great, but just make the movie you can make right now. I think jump in. No one needs to make you a director. You just need to direct something, and then you're a director. And I think it is great to put yourself out there, try ideas, but also embrace community. Don't do it all yourself. If you're a really good writer and you don't know how to direct, find a director who needs a good writer. There's a lot of those out there, especially in Sacramento. There's a lot of very talented camera operators and filmmakers in the area, but there aren't a lot of people creating stuff, with a lot of original ideas. And then the other thing, I try to focus on getting festival impact, which is not a big deal. You don't need a bunch of accolades, but I think trying to make sure the films you make get seen is kind of an important aspect of it. And I feel like that honors how hard the crew is working, how hard the actors are working, and stuff like that. And so I think, see the process through, even if it doesn't do well. The idea of learning about festivals, learning about the circuit, learning about, I love the change, very proud of the film, so proud of the kids involved. One of the things we learned was don't make 16-minute short films. A lot of festivals were like, we love your film. We can't kick out 2 other 8-minute films to put you in. And so that's another piece of advice is keep your films 10 minutes and under. It sounds silly, but I'm a dad, so I watch Bluey by side effect. And so I think, those are 8-minute episodes, and that's really about the right length for a short film. Also any of the like Spark shorts or Pixar shorts, like watch successful short films and get ideas for kind of what length of a story to take on. Because I also see a lot of short films where it's too big of a story for too short a time frame, or vice versa, too small of a story stretched too long. And so knowing the proper length for your story and what you should be creating is really important as well. So do your research.
Nice. You guys take that advice, go out there and do it. Like Nick says, it can happen. And there's a lot of talent here in Sacramento. Also, guys, if you are out after all of that, access Sacramento. A lot of people will come and just to help out. I've worked on a lot of films as an extra, so the community definitely comes together to help each other out and get this done. And there's a lot of a place called Sacramento, where they choose the best and 10-minute scripts. So it can happen. It happens all the time in Sacramento. Shout out to Trevor Harris. Shout out to Ethan Eskilson, up-and-coming directors out there in Sacramento. Thank you, guys. Nick, I thank you so much for coming on to Rossie's Clubhouse. I appreciate you allowing me to sit down with you and talk about your new documentary. I can't wait to see it. I invite you to please come back anytime you want to discuss the new films that you have coming out. I would love to make you a friend of the channel. And I just thank you for your time. Guys, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this interview. I appreciate you all. Please be good to each other. And next week on Monday, I have Mark Snipes, a comedian here in Sacramento. He's great. He's doing big things. And we have some surprises for you at the rest of the month. So until then, guys, I will see you next week so much. And we're out.